Well, I see you have stepped into my office. I appreciate that. Today I'm going to have a chat with you about tracking. I'm going to give you some tips on tracking near or through aquatic environments, specifically a river here in the grand state of Minnesota. I'm going to start off basically just not going through the deep stuff. It's one of the first days of spring, that water's cold, and it would better suit you to learn through where I'm going to show you first. Now, when you're tracking people, there are two kinds of people you're tracking. There are people who are lost, and you're trying to find them, to save them, to help them out. And there are people who are fleeing capture. The people who are fleeing capture, if they know what they're doing, their tracks are going to be hard to find. The people who are lost, they're not really concerned with hiding their tracks all the time. They may not even know counter tracking. And the same goes with people who are fleeing. They may not know counter tracking, and they may also know counter tracking. But generally, you're always going to find some kind of sign, and it may not always be in the ground. That's the other thing I want to cover. Just because you're tracking someone, you're not always going to see a footprint necessarily, or the substantiating sign, the thing that gives away the fact that they travel this way, may not be in the ground. Tracking is like three-dimensional. You're looking everywhere, 360 degrees. It's not just staring at tracks on the ground. Also, you may not find a complete track on the ground. Your footprints may be partial. So, when people go to travel through the water, there's a couple things that you can look for. You can look for disturbances in some of the patterns on the ground. A lot of times when they step, if there's rocks, the rocks are going to get pushed down deeper. Here you can see there's a mud streak. Somebody stepped through here, and what happened is when they stepped through that mud streak, the current, after they picked up their foot, all that sediment that got kicked up, the current washed it away. So here you can see mud. It's bare, and it's actually kind of shaped a little bit like the rounder parts of a footprint, and then the mud continues. If they jump, you're going to see on the other side, generally where they landed, and let me see if I can zoom in here. Here's one track. You can see the tread pattern. And there's the other track, okay? Now, when they jump, if there's any kind of plants or foliage, that of course is going to get pushed down. The rocks that are there are going to get pushed in deeper. And when you track, no matter where you're tracking, you always want to have a notebook. Let me zoom this back out here. Oh, let me zoom it back in actually, because I want to talk to you about something. You want to draw, or you want to measure the distance from the very end of the heel all the way up to the tip of the toes of the tread, or the track, excuse me. You want to measure across like where their toes would be. I like to measure across the ball of the foot and across where the heel is at. And sometimes I'll even measure where the arch is at, just because different footwear or different people's feet are different. And you want to draw that tread pattern, okay? Now, from the back of one track to the back of the next track, like the next foot, on open ground, that's generally going to give you a good indication of the measurement of their gait, okay? And then from one right foot to the next right foot, on open ground, that's generally going to tell you what their pace is normally like, the distance. And then you can measure how many of those are in 100 yards, and that'll help later on, which I'll get into in another video, okay? You're going to notice that you can't see the whole track. That's something you want to remember, if I did mention that already. When you're drawing down and taking in all the details from the tracks, you want to be very specific. If there's any wear marks, if maybe part of that tread pattern is like gouged or missing, you want to draw that down. And it may take you several tracks to get a complete picture of what their foot looks like. So if you are tracking somebody through a river or a body of water, that's something to remember. Also, if somebody steps on one part and it's very muddy on the ground, that'll kick up the mud on the bottom, and everything kind of downstream from where they stepped is going to get muddy for a while, and then everything upstream that way will still be clear. So that's something to consider as well. Boy, it sure is beautiful out here. I will continue to make more tracking videos as time goes on. where I live, we get all the seasons, and it's really important to learn to track in all environments. Tracking is a very cool art. No matter how old you are, no matter how long you study it, you're always going to learn something new. There's all kinds of cool things you can do. Some people will bring out mirrors to redirect the sunlight, or hats to help create shadows so they can get, a better picture of the track. That may apply here as well, especially if it's brighter outside. So, and I'll get into how to do that as well. Something you can do that'll help you is get a very good tracking book. There's one called Visual Man Tracking, and another one that's the SAS Guide to Tracking. Both of those I recommend. One of them I actually know the author. He's a very good guy. Extremely awesome tracker. Really good teacher as well. So those are two resources that should help you out. And another thing is you can actually find some good videos on YouTube. You can find some good sources online, and you can go out and some of this you can figure out for yourself. So it is always it's always best to have some kind of formal instruction. But anything I put on here, for the most part, it's going to be well researched. It's going to come from experience or any kind of instruction I had, and it should be very reliable. So I hope this helps. I appreciate all your views. Feel free to ask questions or leave a comment. And as always, Semper Fi and God bless.